Welcome, seekers and visionaries, to Oracle Mountain Chats. Here on this sacred virtual peak, we gather a space for oracles to share their wisdom, their visions, and their craft. It all began with a calling I could not ignore. One day, within a vision, I held this conch shell in my hands, and as I blew its resonant note into the world, I felt its vibration ripple across unseen realms. It was a summons, a signal to fellow oracles scattered near and far. I saw that we were on a mountain, vast and towering, reaching into the heavens. At its base, the world buzzed with life, people moving, creating, searching. Yet at the summit, there was stillness, clarity, and a circle of light. There, oracles stood, their gaze focused both outward and inward. They spoke of the energies they felt, the shifts they saw, and the whispers of the unseen. They weren't above the world, they were its witnesses and its guides. From this vision, OracleFest was born, a celebration of connection, insight, and the timeless wisdom that flows through us all. The message was clear. It is time. Time to meet upon this sacred mountain, to share what we hear, feel, and see. Time to bring the wisdom of the divine to a world that is yearning for its guidance. Through OracleFest, we've created a movement of community, all yearning to empower their own inner oracle. And here in Oracle Mountain Chats, we bring that spirit into a more intimate space. This is where the oracles gather to reflect, exchange ideas, and to explore what wishes to come through in the moment. This mountain is more than stone and sky. It is a meeting place of the realms, a threshold between seen and unseen, known and unknown. Here we gather as oracles to share the visions Spirit whispers to us, to speak of the energy currents flowing through nature and humanity, and to help guide those who seek answers in a world that often feels lost. So grab a seat, breathe in the mountain air, and join us as we begin today's chat. Whether it's an energy reading, a conversation about our craft, our path, or simply sharing a perspective on the world below, this is where we wait for more oracles to join us on the mountain. What wisdom will the mountain bring us today? Let's find out together. Step into this sacred space where the wisdom of the ages converges with the questions of the present. Beautiful. Well, here we find ourselves atop Oracle Mountain, the virtual space where all these oracles and oracles to be are gathering. And today we find ourselves with Darren Austin Hall, who I just warned him that I was going to use a bunch of descriptive words instead of a title, because most people come on here and we all have the same feeling, which is, what's in a name anyway, truly. But Darren Austin Hall, I would describe as a sage, a sonic mystic, someone who does sound healing, but also writes and philosophizes. So I would call that a sage or a sonic mystic. That would be my description of you. Is that accurate? Anything I missed?
No, that's great. I
Okay.
love Sage, Sonic Mystic. I've been calling myself a troubadour these
Oh,
days.
troubadour. That's a
Very
great
inspired
one.
by the druidry, but I mean, my newsletter's called The Druid, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself a druid. A druid by inspiration, maybe.
Druids being part of your muse collective, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, the druids were apparently three things: the bards, the ovate healers, and the philosophers. So when I found the druid kind of archetype, I was like, oh, this helps to organize
Yeah.
my kind of like Gemini-ness. So I was very drawn to it. Oh, I can be all those things, thank God.
Yes, adds a
Permission
little
slip
containment.
from the
Yeah.
divine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some safety in the names maybe at a certain point. Yeah.
Yes.
I think I felt similarly when I found shamanic oracle, because shamanic being earth-based
Mm.
and connected to these ideas that were before there was division of land and things, that spoke to my heart in a way that made sense and visioning and journeying creatively. But with the oracle idea of that, I was focused more on divination and more on understanding connections between things and maybe the voice of intuition. And then shamanic artists floated in there somewhere, and so we keep adding labels and labels. Um, and so I'm curious, what brought you to the understanding of sound that you have? Because I see things that you share, and I feel very similarly. Not everyone understands this about sound healing or vibration. So I just thought maybe I'll let you riff a little bit on what brought you to see the importance of sound healing.
Well, ironically, it was the first ever session I did with an astrologer when I was about 28 or 29, like just on the verge of my full bore Saturn return. I was in Toronto, Canada, where I was born and raised. I live now in Costa Rica primarily, and I was studying Chinese medicine and traditional medicine, working with indigenous arts as well, and I wasn't feeling quite like solid with that path. And this astrologer, who I now see almost every year on my birthday, basically said, "You're a spiritual teacher and a sound healer." And spiritual teacher, I just love spirituality. Just the ability to teach that made me so joyful. But sound healing, I'd never heard of. This was almost 20 years ago when it was like barely a whisper in the collective. And so she literally just told me to Google it, and that Google search changed everything. But I started to realize when I was a child, I was always musical, but music for me was always a form of inspiration, or rather improvisation was how I liked to make music. We had a grand piano in our house. I used to just fiddle around and make ambient notes with a reverb key, and eventually picked up the guitar when I was a teenager, and had a natural composer because I was also quite a lyricist as I came into my teenage years with poetry and such. But it was always this unmistakable moment of just free-flowing creativity that I was always the most fond of. Um, and I also, now I kind of own that I was a bit clairaudient as a child. I was always hearing music, and I would actually sing myself to sleep every single night until I was about 14 years old. And I would just go into trances and sing for like an hour, and I'd see visions of angels and different things. It was quite mystical, but it was just kind of my secret little world. It was just something that I just loved to do and never really shared it with anyone. It wasn't until I started working with shamans and different mystical people in my 20s and then my 30s, I started to realize that this was probably connected to a deeper gift. And from there on in, once I discovered sound healing and particularly the crystal bowls were my gateway into making more of this mystical music, it's just been this continually unfolding journey. We were talking about before we started recording, different instruments, collecting different instruments. Every instrument has a different soul, a different character, and my voice. I do a lot of channeled singing, what I call source singing, but I have a lot of albums with actual songs as well, and these days I've been getting into Ableton, like self-production, making my own ambient music and even electronic dance music. So I just love being an artist because there's just always infinitudes to grow into. It just never stops.
It makes sense. It just occurred to me now, just as you said that actually there's a lot of link between the idea of art and creativity and the spirit, as we know, and being inspired. And so it makes total sense as a link
Mm,
for spirituality. But it's almost like also sound can be a gateway for people getting into spirituality. Because I think what is so beautiful is people really can sense and feel so much more when they know that there's something creating that vibrational shift,
hmm.
right? And so the difference of sitting somewhere and say, oh, that's good energy there, go and feel that, compared to this person is there with a sound bowl and then you're feeling into that vibrational shift. You have like almost like a cue to that. It's a little
Yeah.
easier to believe that actually things are shifting, maybe in that kind of context.
Yeah, I mean, people have come to some of the sound journeys that I've done over the years, and I'm sure other sacred sound artists can attest to this. And they've said, that, oh, that was, I think, the first spiritual experience I've ever had. Because when you're making music for what I call entrainment rather than entertainment, so making frequencies and sounds that deeply influence someone's own vibrational signature, and especially when you're working with drone instruments like crystal bowls, just have this ability to evoke those alpha brainwave states that set you up for that inner journey. Relaxation response kicks in, and then you might deepen to the theta realm, which is where things get really juicy and you get revelations and insights and visions. And because sound and music is speaking to that level of essence that we are, because we're vibrational beings, it does have the ability to attune people to a deeper, more expansive sense of themselves and reality. And that re-enchantment is, to me, one of the most joyful things, to take people into that sacred space. Because I do think on the planet, that's one of the things we've been kind of missing for a long time. Vitamin mystical, we're very deficient in this. So anything that takes us into mystical states of consciousness is going to be a real boon as we start to dismantle this overly materialistic, rigid reality.
Hmm. I like this idea of mysticism because a lot more people are scared of the idea of magic, and it's just this similar kind of idea of believing in what is not only seen, but what is also, and I think awakening other senses into inviting people to have these kinds of experiences makes a lot of people have that moment where things click. That more and more people have those moments in sound experiences, in dance and movement as well, because that gets incorporated into a lot of what you would guide people through, is also moving and releasing, feeling things within their body. Um, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that that would be a lot of people's first experience, because their brain can drift, but they're in a safe place. And then there's
Hmm.
someone to talk to about it after, so they can kind of,
Hmm.
everything can kind of metabolize into a new perspective.
Yeah, and it just, music and sound healing, when it's done in this way, where you're not going and, to a pop concert or something where you're all singing along to these songs, where it's like, where there are no lyrics, where the singer is just using their voice as kind of a creation station
Mhm.
of soul singing or intuitive singing. And the songs can go on. Like when I do sound journeys, sometimes it's just one tapestry of different sounds and instruments weaving into each other. So, there's no pause moment where the intellect is really cued. Then it becomes like a portal. And then music does have the ability to then put someone on a journey. And I mean, I think most people do this in a mundane way. If they ever just deeply listen to music, not just in the background, often when people go through heartbreak, they'll lie on the couch in their grief and their sorrow, and they'll listen to like, sad songs, and that allows them to like recall things and go on a retrospective journey of their heart. And so I think people are already attuned to this. It's just we're turning up the volume of that inner experience of music as portal. And it's very profound. I mean, even Carl Jung, before he passed away, was speaking about how music had the ability to really amplify psychotherapy sessions
Mhm.
because it really allows the soul to go into this ocean of sound and vibration, which is kind of what it's native to. And from there, you can churn, the deeper unconscious of the soul, where all that symbolic, revelacious realm happens. And that's, that mystical consciousness getting brought online. And that is just so meaningful for people when they get into that, because a lot of people, if they're just living their life in this very kind of automatic way, going to work, yada, 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 and they're not taking that time to make time for timelessness, as I say, then they don't realize there's all these other realms, to our reality that aren't scary, that are suffused with beauty and wisdom. And realizing that we have a natural birthright to connect to those realms is incredible. And music just is one of those keys that unlocks a lot of those doorways.
Mhm. Music's a key for me as well, so I'm just nodding
Yes.
along vigorously here.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, and so is it all right if I backtrack you and go back to
Of
your
course.
childhood in that story? It just has my heart kind of going, oh, there's
Mm.
something here. And it occurs to me also that lots of people have these similar experiences as children that we shy
Yes.
away from, and that you had forgotten about it until later on, that this was, or you just hadn't really thought much of it because it was just that's just what it was, that was your life.
Just hadn't contextualized it in the right
Right.
way. I just thought it was this weird eccentric thing I was doing as a kid. And my parents or no one sort of were like, he's got a shamanic gift. It was more like he's doing this weird thing, and thankfully they were tolerant of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was grateful. My father was tolerant of my. I would tell him I'd had these dreams, Dad. I had this dream, and then this thing happened, and it was exactly what they were gonna say. And I said,
Hmm.
That doesn't make sense. Tell me how that makes
Right.
sense. A wise
Yeah.
one, because my father, he fixes the computer. He knows everything. And he
Right.
said, "Oh, your grandma had that. Don't worry about it."
Oh, interesting.
And so I thought, oh, okay, all right, just a thing grandma was also playing
Just
with.
just a thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
as
didn't
children
question
it
it.
is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder how many people are hiding their like latent gifts in what they just thought was, stories of their childhood. When I think of imaginary spaces I had as a kid, a lot of them had to do with nature-based energy or magic or powers, because I was so fascinated in the idea that someone could use fire, someone could use water, and someone could use like air to do something to like help a
Yeah.
situation. And
Yeah,
then
I
that's a
know
lot similar now.
in some indigenous cultures, they're very emphatic on this point that when we're children, our gifts are very obvious,
Mm,
and we come in with these eccentricities. And when we're very young, we're often like playing them out in this uninhibited way because we have no filters yet, no social
right.
conditioning. And so they would have, the elders would be very observant of the children because they'd recognize, okay, this is where we get to see their medicines very clearly. And then they'd encourage them on certain pathways of development. And to me, it's such a travesty in our culture that's really lost touch with that because people lose that connection. Some people go their whole lives not knowing what their real, like, big gift is that they're supposed to give. And it's such a joy, when you find your gift and then you get to serve in that capacity because you feel useful to others. You feel like you're, yeah, bestowing this incredible, sagacious service on the holy whole. And then, people can recapture that. And I think that's why spirituality is so important because even in your 20s and your 30s, especially Saturn returns in your 30s, when you pass through that portal when you're 30 and you get a deep glimpse into your Dharma. And so it can be reinvigorated, but it makes you think, wow, if we were children and these gifts were already enthused, what would change in our life and
Mm-hmm.
our world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the whole way through, right? I definitely
Mm,
find when clients
totally.
tell me about, oh, my kid said this thing and it was exactly what you were saying in that vision the other day. I went, well, your kid
Mm,
gets it, when are you going to get it? That we
right.
forget how wise we were in that state to just be receptive and open and to trust what we're seeing or feeling. And it's kind of playful. I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
connect to that space now in dreams as well. But certainly as a kid, I was singing songs, and I'm sure there was a lot of depth and meaning to them if I were to get a little tape recorder out and interview little Kate and what are you singing about today? And maybe, little Darren
100%.
probably was telling us exactly about these times today, but in some cryptic form.
It's an interesting idea.
You never know.
It's definitely an interesting idea. Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, there's a something as well that I think is cool about sonic healing. Is that so many more people are talking about vibration and are talking about energy nowadays in basic, day-to-day conversations. It's less alternative thinking to refer to the energy of things than certainly when I was growing up. And so do you find also the translation for people understanding energy or your own understanding of energy? For me, as I started to practice with my voice more, I would realize that there's certain frequencies which needed resolve or something. It
Mm-hmm.
would it would feel like, so I'm curious your input on this as I'm, more of an observer, is it would feel like, okay, at this note, there's something that feels not quite stable in my frequency. And as I make that note more clear, I come into my own fuller sense of self, or just
Yeah.
I can be present with that energy without it, warbling or something in that sense. How do you explain or how do you see that?
Yeah, no, that's exciting. That to me, that's the real juiciness about sound
I think
healing is
so.
that it invites like a whole new sense of our world. When I teach, like, so I've developed a whole training and academy called Source of Resonance on sound healing. And pretty much when I discovered sound healing, it was through that Google search. It was through the knowledge principles at first that really gripped me, because it is this convergence point between science and spirituality. Because when you understand vibration and energy are synonymous, and you understand what the quantum physicists were saying, and then you go back to what the ancient wisdoms teachings on the matter of, you realize, wow, we're all starting to come together full circle here. And so sound healing in itself is a portal into understanding vibrational reality, even vibrational cosmology, because a lot of the ancient wisdom stories about the creation of the universe are about it being something musical, about sound. Even science calls it the Big
Big
Bang.
Bang.
It's a sound. But in the Bible, it's like in the beginning there was the word, but we know in the Aramaic, original translation, word is actually means something closer to vibration or sound. And I mean, world over, you find stories like this. So I find sound healing when you educate people around it. There is this massive like aha moment, intellectually speaking. But then when you take them into an experience, whether it's a sound journey or even their own voice activation work, with toning inside of their body, as you discovered, finding these tones that you would resolve, it starts to really excite our vibrational nature. When you tone the seven chakras, for example, there's very simple vowel exercise that you do. It's one of the most foundational toning practices, in my opinion. When you do that, you feel vibrations. You feel a shift in yourself after doing that, because you start to realize, wow, I am vibration on my deepest level. So when I work with sound and vibration, I am working on this very foundational level of myself and reality. And I think people are being more primed to be more sensitive to the energetics. I mean, the age of Aquarius, which we're apparently just at the beginning of, is all about subtle energy. It's about really realizing that there is these subtle energetics that are unifying all of our reality. And when people get into that, that is this, as I mentioned earlier, the re-enchantment of the world, where the magic of the world all of a sudden is restored. And that brings great joy in the face of, like, atheistic materialist science, which is like, oh, it's just this mechanical reality, there's no God. It's so blah, it's so boring. No wonder, there's so much existential nausea, around reality for people who are just conditioned in that worldview.
Mhm. Oh, so many things I want to jump off to from
Hmm.
that. It's so
Do it.
good. It really is. It's so beautiful because it's so simple. And I was noticing it. Funny enough, the dogs were just barking as you were chatting there, so I muted myself for a moment just in
Okay.
case they were
Nice.
just so excited that
Like,
we're
yes, he's speaking truth.
exactly. I'm like, oh, now they're looking out for you again. And but I had this thinking as one of the dogs came up to me that this is the way that we communicate is in these well, you heard me just before starting this call that I was like speaking to the dog from a
Mm,
different voice or a different tone, or I'm making different sounds, right? Because there's a communication there, right? And then there's a communication between all of us that kind of gets warbled when we have language in the way. And then they call
mm.
music our universal language. And so it can be
Yes.
so simple because we do all recognize, hey, people in New Zealand and China and Brazil can all listen to a same song and have some sort of like unity.
Oh,
Hey,
truly.
we all got together, right? And understood this. But what about when the songs have this depth and healing
Hmm.
potentiality, and to think of what more could happen in communities when this this sound wave that it surpasses or bypasses maybe that like need for humans to have to like talk about it, understand it, and get back and forth and make full rational sense of it. It just makes sense on its own. It's vibrationally true, and so it almost can zoom people through that process, right? And which is,
100%.
I
Yeah.
guess, why people have music and sound on while we're doing other healing tools, right? Why would you listen to relaxing music at a spa? Because it
Right.
enhances your ability to
Yes.
experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
deeply interesting.
Universal language. I mean, it is music. Everyone loves music. So I think we're going to see, in our lifetime to come, as sound healing becomes more understood and more accepted, the influence it's going to have on music. I mean, I'm already seeing it, in the conscious community scene, like medicine music,
Yeah.
sound healing, ceremonial music. All these things are like really popular now because people don't want to just turn on pop music that has like vapid, lyrics that they can't relate to it anymore. They want depth, they want beauty, they want music that's going to evoke the mystical. And that's exciting, and I'm really excited at what is going to continue to be innovated in that realm.
I so agree with you that people are like searching and longing for this depth and meaning. And so if they come across your music and they feel that sense of yeah, like they're resonating with it and they can feel that experience in their body, then the idea would be that someone can then go throughout their day a little bit shifted in how they're viewing the world. And that has this ripple effect. So even if nothing else changed in their life, but they just started listening to some more of this, um, it's a much more energetically strong. I don't want to like, dismiss music because music has this emotional impact for us all, right? And we'll cycle through. There might be phases where people have pop music as their thing that gives them meaning. And but
Sure.
there's something so juicy if people haven't experienced it yet is listening to this conscious music and to this healing focused music. The intention is actually yeah, to invite you into this mystical understanding. It can take you on quite a journey. And I know I've told my clients many a time they're sick of hearing me tell them to go dance, to go dance to
Yeah.
find an answer. But some extremely moving revelations can happen when your body is not telling you a billion things and you've let go of that dependency or connection to it so strongly as allowing it to get in the way. And I think same with sound, it must have this vibrational signal somewhere to say, hey, like put this down for a second and just be with this right now, just be
Yeah.
present with this. Like I couldn't put on your music and then go do work, for example, because I find it
Yeah.
challenging to be present
Yeah.
with it while I'm trying to
It's like,
be mentally present with something else.
yeah, these super reverberating crystal bowls that like, especially if you have it on loud, it's like, whoa, my whole brain is vibrating. Like,
Yeah. Well, it's trying to
yeah,
match. It's trying to understand what is this that I'm exposed to, right?
yeah, and that's kind of the idea, is to have entrainment, have a deeper influence on people, and that's why a lot of artists love doing the sound journey stuff because you have people coming to deeply listen to your music. You're not going to be playing at a bar or a pub where you are kind of an accomplice to the experience.
Hmm.
Here you are creating the primary experience, and all musicians want to be listened to deeply,
Yes.
because there's so many nuances that happen, especially with sound journey music where you're moving from instrument to instrument. There's so many, like I just love all the spaces in between and silence, the holiness of silence. I think it was said once that, sound creates silence. The vibrations sort of architect an energetic temple that when the sound of the music ends, that's where you can really sit and receive a lot of information from your inner world, your inner guidance system. I always tell, my students after the sound journey, at least 1 minute, if not, 5 minutes of silence. Is so sweet. It's such a delicious integrative moment.
Hmm. We find that that's also the time where a lot of things land, right? You can
Mm,
listen to someone talk, and then it's when you walk away that you go, oh, it's sort of all, compresses or something. And I
totally.
used to find the same. I mean, early in my 20s, I was a receptionist for a chiropractor, and I would see the
Mm,
same thing people coming in for a treatment, and then they would be so different when they leave because they had that moment of letting all life sort of compress and come together after that balancing whatever it was that they had.
yes, totally.
Yeah, very interesting because you'd see people come in a total bad mood and you go, this is someone I'm talking to after their adjustment. And other people, they would leave too sleepy that you have to catch them before their adjustment because that balance after is they're just walking on a cloud and you can't even
Wow.
catch their attention. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So you must see then lots of shifting states and change states? Do people
Oh,
look different when they come into an event with you?
100%. I mean, you see such a polar shift, and I've also had a lot of people tell me, not just right after the event, like the next day or days.
Yeah.
I just had a woman here in Costa Rica come and tell me that she attended, I think it was a new moon sound journey that I did. I like to do them on lunar activation nodes. And she said, the next week there was just all this like abundance that came to her life. New job, new uh, money came out of nowhere. And she was just amazed, and I kind of just told her, well, we are vibrational beings as well. And when you hear these sounds, they start to vibrate you, especially crystal bowls, they really resonate the human body. Your bones, are very crystalline in structure. And we have all these meridians, all these energetic pathways that get kind of mucked up with energy. So a sound journey is also kind of cleansing of the
Mhm.
soul body. And then what I see happens is then they go out into their life, and there's all this information that's been wanting to get in, all these circumstances, synchronicities, and all of a sudden everything's zipping all of a sudden because there's been a vibrational kind of cleansing.
Yes, it is so cleansing. If if people have not been to a sound bath or a sound healing experience before, then probably the word sound bath sounds odd to people.
Right.
But once you've been to one, you go, "Yep, I feel like I just came
Totally.
out of the bath." You're relaxed, but you've also let a lot of thoughts come in and float around with you, and then hopefully you leave them in the bathwater if they need to be. Uh,
Fill up one of the crystal bowls, and
oh my gosh, yeah, exactly. That would
some
be
of those bowls are
perfect.
quite big. They could be
Yeah,
little baths, and then you get
bird
some
baths
missing
at
it.
the very least,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now that's an interesting thing. Has a bird ever been in one of these?
Well, they tell you that animals should not be in the crystal bowls. They're like,
No,
do
it'd
not
be so
let
much.
animals.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember doing a few concerts at places where there was like someone's cat. It was like a house concert. After the concert, there'd be like two cats and two of my bowls just chilling there.
Yeah.
They probably liked it. They're like, oh, this is cool. It's got quite a
Yeah.
vibe.
Post event vibes, it's like
Yeah,
rippling out and they're just there soaking it up. I think that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, I always have animal interruptions whenever there's energy work happening.
Oh, I mean, here in Costa Rica, when I do a lot of my concerts outside, they just attract so many birds and um, or the howler monkeys, which is something to deal with because they make quite these crazy sounds. But time and time again, when I do sound work, animals come. They
They
just
do.
come. It seems to be so consistent. They
They
must
do.
they must hear the vibrations, obviously, and they're drawn to it.
Absolutely. I love that as well. And often, even actually, as I'm sitting here just doing like oracle work, readings or shamanic
Mm.
journeying, there will be specific moments with even birds coming up to, though I'm not in the beauty of Costa Rica, there's a lot less animals up here in Canada at the
Right.
moment. But even
Yeah.
having these kind of I remember that about Costa Rica as well, the significance of these animal
Mm.
moments. And yeah, I think they must be called to the sound as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, certainly found that quite a bit. And I love the idea that there's this cleansing, like you were saying, almost everything could shift into alignment for this gal that had been at one of your experiences, right? And after the fact, all these
Mhm.
things start coming together that actually all those stuff that we're holding on to a lot of the time is influencing our frequencies, and we can feel really buzzy, and coming back to sound healing, coming back to even silence, because maybe people haven't had the joy or the treat of
Mhm.
silence.
Mhm.
um, and the vibrational shifting that happens a few days after, because it's still like we're water, we're resonating with, people have seen online these, you've seen these water droplets.
Dr. Emoto's work,
There
yeah,
you go.
for
There you go.
sure.
Oh, that too. Okay, that too. That was when you looked actually at
Oh,
the.
yeah.
I was thinking. I was thinking of something a little sillier, but you're right on. That was a better, better example. I was thinking of those like speakers that have the water.
Oh, cymatics.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Right. Of
we watch loads of those videos in the trainings because
course.
that's just another moment of, well, that's where you realize sound has a creative power. Like
Exactly.
everything that has form is actually sound.
Yes.
Once the sound or the song stops, the form just dissipates back to the formless.
Right.
It's
I'm
very
hoping this
deep.
is getting people bubbling, trying to make connections of wait, wait, wait. Now that thing that they're talking about with sound and energy absolutely makes sense. Go watch these videos and it'll make even more sense to
Yes,
you.
absolutely. Cymatic, CYMA, ticks. Yeah,
Cymatics. Yeah, because it
cymatics.
does. It all wakes you up to the idea that energy is between all things and sound is
Oh,
of that and how
it's a
pure that
gateway
is.
to
It
so
is.
much.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And for yourself, sound is continually a gateway to this spiritual, expansive, non-ordinary. That's why it never ends. Like our creativity can never end, can never just be, well, that was idea 313 done for me. Went through all the ideas of my lifetime. I'm complete as an artist. That would just never happen. And non-ordinary is the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like so vast.
That's why it's so beautiful to be artistic, and every human being is artistic in some way. It's just
Mhm.
finding the proper channel for one's creativity. But the beauty is you realize that that creative impulse is infinite. There's always going to be new ideas, new urgings, and that's why I'm also a great devotee and student and lover of just music in general and seeing, I love the trajectory of artists, where you see how they've traveled through life. Like one of my favorite artists is Peter Gabriel because when he puts out an album, he really puts his life into the album. Like he tells songs and stories about his life. And to me, the highest artists are the ones who can touch that universal pulse in our humanity. And he has that ability to make these songs that just become like so resonant with millions of people all over the planet. And he just released a new album last year, and he's quite old now. I think he's probably in his late 60s, and still just putting out amazing work. It's just amazing to see some artists in their twilight years, even just still producing incredible works of art.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I think I love that too because I love the idea that my work never ends. Like as long as I'm alive, I'm creating and working and adding to what
Yeah,
helps the planet. And so, yeah, you're
totally.
never you're never at the end of art
Yeah.
of your creative. There's no limits really. Also in that way,
Mhm.
beautiful. Anything else you wanted to add in? I know we're wrapping up timing wise, and so anything else you want to add into these viewers before they get to see you at OracleFest?
Well, to throw a little druid curveball in there, I mean
Yes.
the sound healing is like one of my great loves for sure. But the philosopher in me, the lover in me, one of the big paradigms that I've been trying to teach more about and is encapsulated in my first published book, Love's Revolution. Just this idea of conscious partnership, sacred sexuality. These are such important medicines for humanity right now. I think we're dealing with such a big worth wound on the planet. And I've been really tracking this wound, and I think it comes back to a lot of the ancient religions, telling humanity we were originally sinful or flawed, and then this huge collective shame body has been built up over time. And if we go back to that story of Genesis, they were really covering their naked bodies, their sexual organs. So this sexual healing, I know this is a big thing to talk about right at the end.
No, take your time, but
It's like quite a rabbit hole. Um, but it's just been a passion of mine, mostly through my own wounding. I think when humans really get into a vulnerable state around these things, we realize we've all got tremendous wounds around, the right use of our sexual energy, our relationships. Like how we're given no map. The education is so paltry, and then we're thrown into these experiences of intimacy where we're using these ginormous forces of sex and opening our hearts and our lovingness. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And I find when people get into their 20s and 30s, most people are so scarred, so cynical. And what I feel with these sacred sexuality paradigms and conscious partnership is it's providing this new kind of guiding light in a new way forward, something we're pioneering because I think human relationships, intimate relationships, are kind of in this state of novelty right now. It's like men and women have never been so equanimous. We've never had so much understanding about the human state itself. And then sacred sexuality, tantra, So yes, sacred sexuality, conscious partnership, these things are, really captivating people because I think people are realizing we are so wounded in these departments, and there's such a beauty way forward in healing these things, bringing wholeness back. And so this book, Love's Revolution, a collection of essays, poetry, and short stories, is really my own perspective on how that healing is going and what needs to be done. And it gets into the mythopoetic, that begins with the Rise of Eve short story, where I retell the story of Genesis, as I mentioned, from this perspective of Eve actually being a heroine seeking empowerment, and then teaching Adam sacred sexuality. And actually ends, I guess I'm outing my Catholicness, it ends with a spiritual erotic short story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Because Magdalene, this specter of Magdalene is so important because it's humanizing Jesus, and it's allowing women and the feminine to be, welcomed into the fold of a story and a religion that's been so decidedly male and patriarchal.
Hmm. This story means so much to me. I feel like we probably could do another 3 hours just on that alone from my own
Oh,
personal
well,
connection with
we
Mary
could do it
Magdalene.
sometime, sure.
Yeah, not now, not now. There's a lot of beauty to hold in those stories and the reimaginings or retellings or the true feelings into them. I feel, anyways, the more I would connect to the beings themselves, I would be like, oh, this is a bit of a different story than what I was familiar with or connected to. And um, yeah, I love this idea that there's a renewed a renewed way of looking at all the roles that we have played
Hmm.
as women, but also I think as all humans in the interplay between these. So beautiful. I am so thrilled and excited that you're bringing more of this subject as well on because you're going to be part of our twin flame and spiritual romance panel discussion. So we'd love to hear
Yes,
more of this. That's not going to be it for everyone who's just going, oh, he's ending on that note.
exactly.
There will be more, and you can also get his book. And then we're gonna get to witness a sound healing experience of some kind, whatever the druid wishes to share on the Friday. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it'll be sort of an amalgamation of things. I may share
Beautiful.
some poems, some songs, some sound journey music. It'll be very druidic in that sense.
Beautiful. Now I know a druid who is part of the druid culture over in Scotland. She lives way north in the Highlands, and she's one of my shamanic guides. She's older than me and knows quite a lot, but keeps it silly. And
Okay.
she said that it's very important for us if we feel called with song or with dance to bring it towards shamanic work or bring it towards healing in general, that we must bring song and dance further and more into spirituality and into healing. So I thank you for doing some of that work. I feel it's very important.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. I agree. I think
Yeah,
it's massive, and
it is.
we're amalgamating massive forces in the world. So amazing time to be alive.
Yes, it is. Beautiful time to be alive. Beautiful time to be here on Oracle Mountain with Darren. And we're so looking forward to having you with us at Oracle Fest. So thank you very much and
So,
enjoy the rest of your day. And everyone who's watching, enjoy the rest of yours.
thanks, Kate. It's been a delight.